Welcome back, 21 minutes past 10. Well, as part of our ongoing series of face-to-face interviews with all Mayo candidates ahead of polling day on November 29th, this morning it's the turn of the Green Party. And they have nominated Micheal Boxty Ó Conaill, who is going to represent the Green Party on the 29th of November. He's live in studio with me this morning. Micheal, good morning.
Good morning, Tommy, and good morning to all your listeners.
Let's clarify the Boxty part first. Where did that come from?
Well, for many years after I was a number of years in Dublin, about 10 or 12 years in Dublin, where I had an insurance brokerage there. And when I moved back to Erris, I ran the Boxty factory. I owned the Boxty business I'm sure a lot of your listeners out there, if they're over 10 or 15 years old, I suppose they probably had my Boxty for their breakfast on many mornings.
And when did you get out of the Boxty business?
A number of years ago. I can't remember exactly how, maybe 10
And was it a big business for you?
It was big enough. I had about 6 employees, and I had a Nudros factory there in Belmullet. It was a great product, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, you're from Foxpoint, there down in the Erris area. You did run in the local elections last summer, 117 votes in total. Are you hoping for more than that this time?
Yes, and I'd be hoping for a lot more votes even out of Erris this time than the last time, because a lot of there were 3 strong candidates, 2 incumbents in Erris, and the people that would know those 3 candidates, they would be also friends with me. So, the priorities will be different this time.
I will talk about your priorities in a second, Micheal, because that's obviously what people will want to hear. But one of the comments that came in, and there's lots of comments and questions which I will pose to you, because we told listeners you'll be on. And I think this is a kind of a good way to start. He said, this texter says, can you please ask Micheal Boxty Ó Conaill his assessment of how the Green Party are viewed in rural Ireland? Can he understand why so many of us, the hard-working taxpayers, aren't enthusiastic about the Greens when we're being hit with government levies as well as regular carbon tax cuts on our diesel and petrol whilst commuting to work because there isn't a proper alternative? Also, retrofitting isn't available for the vast majority of people because they simply don't have that much money to spare to pay up front for the work that's needed before any grants are paid out. So, and I think it's a good place to start because the Greens don't get a lot of positive reaction from our listeners.
Well, the unfortunate thing is that we're fundamentally different to every other party in that we don't accept corporate donations, and that's a very important thing. It mightn't seem like it from the outside, but he who pays the piper calls the tune, and we are up against the $7 trillion industry in the fossil fuel industry. And it's actually 100 trillion, not millions, not billions, trillions. And I just heard on the news this morning there that at the COP negotiations in Azerbaijan, there were 1,700 lobbyists paid by them. Now, as I say, he who pays the piper calls the tune. And there's a massive disinformation. Like the public out there, and the public particularly in the west of Ireland or in Mayo, they believe that, number one, the Green Party is against farmers, and number 2, they want to stop you cutting turf. Now, neither of those things are true. They are damned lies, because the recent directive, it clearly states in black and white, and go online and look at mygov.ie and where you'll find it there in black and white. It clearly states that anybody who has turbary rights can continue to cut turf. They can gift turf to their family. They can sell turf. Now, the only thing that they cannot do, they cannot set up a fuel depot, or they cannot sell it in a shop or a filling station or something like that.
Can they sell it to a shop? For the shop to sell?
No. A shop cannot sell it. Well, they can't sell it to the shop. The shop can't sell it on, obviously.
And do you cut turf yourself?
Well, Tommy, I was born in the middle of the bog, and I spent a lot of time there, I understand the nostalgia around it, up until very recently, with the older guys, the down in the pub, the conversation would be all about the turf and how wet the bogs are, and we're never going to get the turf this year, and like it's part of the culture. And you know, it's hard to. The reality is that the young people don't want to cut turf. And actually, during the local elections, I remember a story where I was talking to a young mother in Bangareras, and I actually mentioned the turf and how, you know, they were being peddled those lies about our position on turf. And she said to me something that was very interesting. She said, "Listen, we're building a new house. We're moving out here, and there'll be no effing chimney on it." She wasn't going to the bog with her gel nails, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. And actually, there was a guy a few years ago who cut turf on a big scale and sold it around the Erris area. And that's before ever I got involved with the Green Party. And he said to me one day that, you know, it's not Eamon Ryan that's going to stop people cutting turf. It's the next generation. And you know why? Because with the flat of turf that he cut, the only two people that he could get to save the turf was his mother, who was, you know, a fairly elderly woman, and a 65-year-old Polish lady from Crossmolina. He had to go out and pick up the Polish lady in Crossmolina to save it. And that's the reality of turf. You know, this is 2024, that we have better means of heating our houses and
but
better means
going
of
back
fuel.
to the point made, Micheal, that it's all fine and well, offering incentives to people to retrofit their homes, but if they have to come up with substantial amounts of money of their own, that doesn't make it feasible.
I'm glad you brought up that, because another thing that we brought in that the Green Party was responsible for bringing in was a soft loan. You can get a loan out for retrofitting your house for something around 3%. It's virtually free money. And that makes it possible.
And is that available now?
It is, yeah. It has been available since not this last budget, the budget before.
Okay, and so it's called the soft loan. Where do people apply for
well,
it?
SCAI is the first stop for
Sustainable
that.
Energy Authority of Ireland. Right. Can I ask you this question here? Have a look at that photograph which came in on WhatsApp. It says, Tommy, just a question for Boxty. The Greens are pushing for more wind farms whilst cutting down trees. Wind turbine lifespan is 20 to 25 years, and the picture attached is foundation that is put in place and stays in the earth for however. How does this make any sense? Do you want to comment on that?
I do indeed. Yeah, this is a foundation for a windmill.
It looks like it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you discovered an oil well that would never run out, would you be very excited?
Yes.
Well, a windmill or a solar panel is an oil well that will never run out. And just to talk about solar panels, for instance, enough energy hits the world any day in 1 hour of any day to power the world for a year. Now, before we came on air, I just mentioned to you there that I rode up here from Belmullet on sunshine this morning because, and I can show you my bill on my phone, my ESB bill. I put 22 solar panels on my roof about a year and a half ago, just over a year and a half ago.
How much did it cost you?
Well, it cost me more than normal because I had a chimney in the way that I would have to knock, so I had to put optimizers. This is beside the point. And I also got a battery pack, so it cost me slightly more. It would cost a lot less than even now. But the point is that at this stage, I have €2,300 credit on my phone bill. And that's why I bought an electric car just a few weeks ago to use up some of this power. And, you know, it works. And, like, if the Green Party weren't in power, number one, I would have to get planning permission to put them on my roof. Number two, I wouldn't have got a grant. I got a grant of €2,400. I would have to pay VAT on the solar panels themselves, which is 0 rated now because of the Green Party, and I wouldn't be able to sell the power back to the grid, which would be like 2/3 of my power is going back to the grid.
And you genuinely believe that had the Greens not been in power, none of those initiatives would have
absolutely happened? Like, I've heard, even like 20 years ago, I've listened to the other political parties, talking about, our great natural resources, our fisheries, our forestry, wind power, wave power, blah, blah, blah. But they're only paying lip service to it. They're talking out the sides of their mouth. There was a lady in Belmullet that had her entire house covered with solar panels, and she was very, very angry because she couldn't, all of that power that she didn't use was going to waste, or she wasn't getting anything out of it until the Green Party.
All right, front of the Irish Examiner this morning, we don't take climate threat seriously enough. This is a report that says that political leaders and voters are not taking the threat of climate change seriously in the general election campaign, despite its devastating effects becoming more apparent in Ireland. According to the campaigners, international researchers have this week issued fresh warnings that on the current trajectory, global heating will smash the 1.5 Celsius, scientists say, is the limit to stave off the worst climate change. So they're saying that Irish voters and politicians don't heed this imminent 1.5 centigrade watershed. We've seen what's happened in Spain over the last number of weeks. We know we've had a wetter summer here this year than for a long, long time. We're told that next year is going to be the hottest year on record. So why aren't we taking all of these things seriously enough?
Well, politicians aren't, because like the other political parties, they look for 2 or 3 or 4 years. There's no long-term planning. Even though they have a bonanza of money now in corporation tax, and they had something like 24 billion of a surplus, but they're more intent on buying votes, and like people aren't sheep. People understand that they're buying votes, that's what it's all about. Like that money should really be put into infrastructure, and the infrastructure for the first thing I put on my website, my Green Party website, was sustainability is an opportunity. And like we have an unbelievable opportunity here now if we can take it but if the infrastructure, if for offshore wind in particular, we have the best wind in the world, and but we won't be able to harness that unless we have the infrastructure to do it, to service it.
But Micheal, I know you say you're different to every other political party, but the reality is the Greens have been in government for the last 5 years. You've indicated the things that they've done that you reckon wouldn't have been done had you not been there. But like all the parties, I mean, I heard Roderick O'Gorman the other night, saying that if we get back in, we will do A, B, C, D and E. And like every other political party, the question you ask is, well, why didn't you do it in the last 5 years?
Well, you can only do so much, at a time, and really, if we use the boxing parlance, I've been involved in boxing a long time as well, and a lot of people know me from that. But if we use the boxing parlance, like we really punched above our weight. Like we were the minority party in the government, and like I know that minority parties in government are often punished because they get blamed, and there's the bigger parties in our coalition. Even though I have to say that the coalition worked very well together, and like the Green Party delivered stable government to this country for the last 4 years, which was a very important thing. And like we are, like a lot of the opposition now will tell us, how we should spend the surpluses we have. But like if they were in power, perhaps we wouldn't have any surpluses. And that's the thing to remember.
All right. Just to clarify again, because lots of listeners are asking, and I did ask you the question, but I don't know if I got an answer. Do you cut turf?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I did when I was growing up in Foxpoint.
Yeah, but not in the last number of years?
No, and I don't. Personally, I don't regard it as a good fuel.
Okay.
I burn. It's actually something that's made from the kernels of olives at the minute. It's a smokeless fuel.
And does it go into a stove? Into a stove,
yeah,
right.
Into an inset stove.
Okay.
And I burn wood pellets. But even that's obsolete at this stage, because like I would really love to have a house where I had a heat pump, where it's seamless, where I have nice warm house all the time, And, I don't have to be dragging in, I don't have to be going out in the cold to bring in a bag of stuff or whatever.
Would you be in agreement, and I know Roderick O'Gorman has kind of rolled back on this, there was a suggestion that the Greens were saying that people should be charged a tariff or a levy or a tax based on road usage. Would you be in favour of that?
Not really. You see, one of the things, I've just became the chairman of the Mayo Greens also recently, and I have an ambition to build the party here in Mayo, because I think there's a big need to get more rural Greens into the party.
Okay, but on the question of a levy or a tax based on the amount of time you spend on the road, would that be a way of disincentivizing people from not carpooling, for example?
I wouldn't actually agree with that, because you see, somebody that's living in Belmullet is going to be disproportionately punished just for a living, and this is the reason why we need more rural Greens, because it's a different solution for rural Ireland than it is for Dublin or for the cities. Let's say, for instance, if you're living in Blacksod or Strathshagal or some far-flung place like that, and it's 11 o'clock at night on a cold, windy night, you're not going to get on a bicycle and cycle to Belmullet. Now, if you're in Cork or Dublin or somewhere like that, or Galway, a cycle lane is a great invention there. But you're not going to get on the bike from Blacksod if you need a pint of milk at 11 o'clock at night and before the shops close. You need a different solution for rural Ireland.
And what is that solution?
Well, I think you can't stop people from driving, I believe myself, but you can drive, as I drove up here today, on sunshine.
An electric car, yeah.
But or other alternatives.
Okay.
This is something that's evolving rapidly. Like, compare the first electric cars that came out with the electric cars today and the range,
the longevity. And I take that point, but I also would argue the point that most people with electric cars are saying, first of all, the sales of electric cars has decreased this year. No resale value. So why? That's not an incentive to buy an electric car.
I know, and I'd have to put my hands up, and from using one for a short time, I can see the limitations. I have to be honest about it. There are limitations, and somebody again living in rural Ireland, it's different to a housewife that's just taking the kids down to school and going to the supermarket. She doesn't need a 4x4. That's an SUV that's made for going across country, going across rivers and all that. But you have to incentivize people to use electric cars, and there's you see, a lot of people think that that we only have carbon tax because the Greens are in power. Now, the reality is today, if you burn carbon, if you produce carbon, you have to pay carbon tax. Like the carbon tax at the minute is 63.5 euro per tonne, and that goes up by 750, I think it is, every year. Now that's people, and it doesn't matter which party is in government. If there's no Green in government, that is the reality of what will happen. Now, it's not what we pay to Europe is not. It's actually a cap and trade, but it's really a tax. It's really a carbon tax. If you and the public out there don't realise how much we pay in that. I think the current one that's due from 2023 that hasn't been paid yet will be about, depending on what the carbon rate is, it will be about 200 million or over 200 million. So that will increase exponentially over the next number of years. So if anybody thinks that I'm going to be stuck in my ways and I'm not going to adopt to electric cars or to alternative modes of doing things or of heating my house or whatever, they're fooling themselves and they're being lied to by the other parties. It's not feasible. If you produce carbon, you will pay carbon tax, regardless of who's in government.
So many people, Boxty, are saying, and you've heard this argument loads of times, that here we are, a little island on the periphery of Europe. with very strict laws for people in terms of trying to get people to be more green. And yet we have wars in all corners of the world. We have aeroplanes in the skies. We have cities, massive cities like London and Paris and all across Europe, generating loads and loads of nasty fumes into our air. And here we are trying to penalise 4 million people on the periphery of Europe.
We're not trying to penalise Ireland in particular. It's a worldwide agreement with the carbon.
But no matter how good we become, is it going to make a difference? Are we still not going to, we know what the high pressures and the low pressures come. We can't control that. So we can be the best in the world, but yet we are still going to suffer the consequences of climate change.
That's right, Tommy. We have to have everybody on board with this. As we had, we had the hole in the ozone layer and the CFCs, and the people got together and we sorted that out more or less. And we had acid rain and different things, and those problems were sorted. And we can sort this too. All we need is the will to do it.
But if we do it and others don't.
But everybody has to do it, and everybody will.
But they're not all doing it, and we're not doing it.
Yeah, you see, we have to have climate justice as well, as it's called. And I'm surprised you didn't point to China and India. That's the usual. That's the usual argument that's thrown in there.
Well, somebody had asked the question: if you got elected, would you? I'll just get the question here. If elected, would Boxty tariff goods coming in from China?
Absolutely not. No, I think it's unfair to target China. Now, there's a bit of my son worked in China for about 6 months there recently, and he was amazed. And I've heard this from other people as well, how advanced they are. Literally all their cars in Shanghai are all electric cars. They're all Teslas and all electric cars, and they've developed their own electric cars. They're way ahead of us in developing stuff. Now, they are still mining coal and they are still burning coal, but you have to remember, they're making goods for us. We're buying all of the stuff you buy in your computers, your cars, everything else. They're made in China, and you have to allow that. If they're producing the goods for us, you have to allow them a bit of scope. And they are a developing nation. And the other thing is, they're just developing nation, but we've been at this for years. And the Western world produces most of the carbon. Like the developing world and Africa and places like that, they're in credit. They're in carbon credit.
I know that your priorities generally are rural regeneration. You want to increase incentives for small farmers in disadvantaged areas to produce food. Home energy, you campaign for more investment in retrofitting homes, especially for the less well-off. What do you say to the numbers of pensioners who are calling in saying it's all fine and well having very cheap loans, but if you're living on a pension, you can't afford a loan at all? Would you advocate giving free solar panels to pensioners?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, I would. And not just to pensioners, to anybody who's less well off.
People on social welfare payments?
Absolutely, yeah.
On salaries below a specific amount?
Yes, because it's a win-win-win situation. You're not damaging the environment.
Okay.
You're not sending money to Mr. Putin and other people that don't like us. And you're not and you're saving money every month. That's win-win-win.
All right.
It's a no-brainer.
We are out of time, but I just want to quickly say, what are Boxty's thoughts on gas refinery and flaring in his own area? Can you give me a quick answer on that?
I think I don't think there's much gas left in our gas wells at this stage. I think that has run its course. The whole gas thing, it was a very divisive issue over a period of time, and it has run its course at this stage, and I think that argument is over.
These are more comments than questions. Green Party ban drinking straws, but they're using big unrecyclable posters all over the place. This texter says, ask the Greens, when we had the best peat briquettes for burning in homes, we now import these from other countries. David also made the point, he said, I voted last election for Greens, never again. We are overflowing with the banning of turf, which I know you've dealt with, closed board pneumonia, and now we're importing briquettes from Poland and Lithuania. And as for the white elephant of electric cars, no resale value. That's from Dave. What are people supposed to do? This texter says, with the bogs, what does he make of briquettes coming in from abroad and closing down our own factories? Did he say you can sell your turf? Can he clarify this? Yes, you can. We did clarify it. We'll put this up as a podcast afterwards, by the way. Caller says, how do you pay back a loan for solar panels when you're a pensioner? Could you ask Micheal if the plan is to fill Blacksod Bay with floating wind turbines? That's from somebody in Belmullet. Is that the plan?
No, well, we have a big advantage, I think, in that we have the deepest natural water in Ireland in Blacksod Bay.
Okay.
So it might be a good idea to use it as a port for servicing those that'll be much further out in the Atlantic.
This one says, if you have solar panels, why can't you get cash back instead of credit from the grid? It would make more better incentive for people.
You can, actually.
You can?
Yes.
You can get the cash back.
I think if you go over a certain limit, it'll be regarded as income. I think it's tax-free up to €400.
Okay, Electricity Ireland have decreased what they're paying off the grid.
But they've decreased the cost of electricity as well.
It's getting warm because the world is coming out of an ice age. That's a fact. Ask Boxty, does he follow the science, and has he a degree in the subject?
No, I have a degree in art and design. That's the only thing I can claim in terms of a degree, I'm afraid.
Okay. Planning permission is not required for solar panels in any part of Ireland so long as the location is outside. So that's just, he wants to clarify.
It wasn't until the Green Party came to power, though.
Okay, and finally, when did Ireland start growing olives?
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, good point. But it is
where do you get your olive seed?
I don't get the olive seed. It's the people up in the producers up in Leitrim produce it. Yeah, but the raw material is, but it is a waste material.
Yeah,
it's getting rid of a waste material.
All right. In 30 seconds, why is a vote for Micheal Boxty Ó Conaill, Green Party candidate, a good vote?
Well, it's a vote. What I want to ask people is to vote to make sure that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael aren't in on their own or in with independence. We gave stable government to the country for the past 4 years, and I want that to continue. And I want to continue the programme to continue investing in our manifesto. We committed to putting 10 billion into our public transport system.
Network. All right, well, look, the best of luck with the campaign. Thank you so much for coming in, Micheal, this morning. That's Micheal Boxty Ó Conaill, who is representing the Green Party in Mayo for the general election.